Status.
Yeah, I really, you know, I used to be a yoga teacher, as you know. I'm getting back into yoga lately.
Good.
As well.
Yeah.
Which is a lifesaver.
Streaming, but there it is. All right, and we are live. I'm going to kill the volume here so we don't get a bunch of feedback. If you want to check with your audience, and if any of them are on YouTube, see if
yeah,
make sure that we're getting good audio on their end. Otherwise,
so do you want to go ahead and give the YouTube link? So
sure.
So
the YouTube channel is Joshua Lazarus. I actually think it's probably the first one that comes up. You can search that. I have no way to really give you the link at present. But if you look that up, you'll be able to find us pretty quickly. Yeah, the link is watch $V =AN. Yeah, I'm not gonna read that.
Yeah, it's pretty long. It's pretty long. So look up Joshua Lazarus, and maybe there's a what's the title of this? Because if they look up Joshua Lazarus,
so
which is the channel,
hanging out with Mike of At Beautiful Scars 2.0.
There you go. Hanging out Mike of Beautiful Scars 2.0. That should be pretty easy. That should pop up.
It should say with Mike, but that's a horrible, embarrassing thing.
That's okay. I mean, you know, you can always change it. It's so weird to look at ourselves, but anyway.
No.
It's all good. All right, so he's changing it to hanging out
with the proper,
with Mike of Beautiful Scars 2.0, which of course is we're actually live on this right now, right?
Correct.
Yes, which is actually my Instagram name, and you just let me know when to introduce myself.
I'm just gonna do a quick audio check and hopefully not get a ton of feedback here, and we'll get going.
Yeah. You just let me know when.
And we're good.
Cool.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so we got the live chat. You guys are free to put any questions forward as they pop up in your mind, and as we have time, we'll see them. We'll get you contributing to the conversation in any way that we can. The whole purpose of these sit-down discussions that we're having is just real talks with real people from across all the divide, as far as conservative, liberal, artist, construction worker, whatever. Just trying to get people talking again in a productive manner so we can gain some understanding and maybe get to the root of some of the issues that we're facing these days politically. I mean, I think that the political divide in this in the Western world is not endemic to great health, and I've read enough great thinkers to know it's not going to lead us anywhere healthy or hopeful. So, with that said, welcome. Glad to have you here. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
The new studio.
Yeah.
A bit of a vast improvement from the last time we chatted, right?
I think it's great. I think it's really great.
Yeah. I quite enjoy it too. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for anyone of my viewers or subscribers who may not know who you are, kind of give a little bit of a quick rundown. Sure.
Well, my name's Mike, or Michael, or Mikey. My closest friends call me Mikey. I am, I guess, best known on Instagram as, currently it's Beautiful Scars 2.0. The F is a 7 in that, which it's not there, but it's okay. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter.
We'll make that change. We'll make that correction.
Whatever. Doesn't really matter. But 2.0, because the first version, after having reached 10,000 followers, was taken down. It was taken down. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that. Talk about that.
Yeah, when I first met you, I was on the other Beautiful Scars.
Yeah, I had quite a following.
So, the 2.0 has, I think I'm nearing 2,000 now, but I had to start from the top in a way, or start all over. Yeah, I was doing really well on that, and you know, my conservative posts just didn't sit well with them.
It didn't sit well with whom? With Instagram?
I guess with Instagram, with the police. You know, the
thought police.
The thought police.
I mean, there's nothing more I mean, it's nothing different than what you're posting now, though, from what I've seen. I mean, really,
yeah.
Vastly.
I was a little. I do recall being a little harsher before.
Okay.
And being more derogatory. I sometimes still am.
Well. Yeah.
But I do recall that, and I'm sure that's a great excuse to take someone down, even though that may not be the actual reason.
Did they provide any reason? I mean, did they provide
No.
any formal reasoning any email about when they took it down or anything?
Nope, I just couldn't log back on. It just said that, this account has been disabled. And so I started 2.0. I started 2.0 before, like, just in case that might happen.
Yeah, I remember.
And I took a break, actually, because I did sort of get, I'm tired of this crap. I'm tired of this Instagram crap. And then when I was ready again, I started, going back on there and just sharing my thoughts again. But I am doing it a little differently than before in the sense that there's no mega agenda attached to the way I'm doing it now. It's just I'm just sharing my thoughts, where before, there was a little bit more of a goal to get as many followers as I could, for a combination of altruistic and not altruistic reasons,
Sure.
Because I wanted to, share information and have as many people, see this point of view that I have. And then also because, let's not lie, these things make us feel good when you have all these followers and things like that.
Approval. Well,
So,
I'm sure we'll get into
absolutely.
We're going to definitely get into that topic later, especially.
Yeah, we are. We have.
In a pretty big way.
So,
that's unfortunate, though.
Yeah, so just recently I've been rather MIA on Instagram for a good few months. I haven't posted the way I used to, but every so often a weekend would come where I'd be in the mood and then I'd start posting for that weekend, and I knew it would only be for that 1 or 2 days of that weekend, but I no longer felt incredibly motivated. So there's two main reasons that I had stopped, and it's because I got tired of all of the stories that we were hearing online. They just seemed so mundane to me. I think probably with the gun control thing going on right now, that issue, it's starting to get a little bit more interesting to me. But it was mundane in the sense of just liberals fighting with conservatives and conservatives fighting with liberals, and it was just getting so repetitive, kind of babyish, and I'm like, you know what, this is not doing anybody any good. Why don't we talk about the big bankers? Why don't we talk about, and those are the kind of things that I would post. And so if I was going to post something, it had to be something powerful like that. It had to be something to give something different to talk about than just, liberals fighting with conservatives. And this happened at that college, and I'm just, who cares anymore?
Well, yeah, I mean, I find that in myself as well. I'm just tired of it. I find that more and more. The whole cult. I mean, I would say you and I, especially back, not even a year ago, not that long ago, but we're really involved with a lot of the people who were movers and shakers in that sort of in that sort of world of that sort of back and forth vitriolic left versus right sort of combat. When we run the same circles with those kind of people, and that there's something to that adding to the conversation maybe, but I think we've reached a point where it's just toxic.
Yeah.
And it's just creating a further divide in people.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're reaching a point. I mean, we've already covered a point where we have movements of girls to dump their boyfriends for voting for Trump, for example. That's
which happened to you.
We're breaking. We're dividing people up over something that. Well, while it is important, and yes, it is divisive to a degree. We need to be able to acknowledge that our interlocutors, the people on the other side of the aisle, or who come to different conclusions, are just as flawed and mortal as the rest of us.
Yes. Oh, I've noticed that. I've noticed that. And so let me not leave this out of my introduction, my self-introduction. I suppose I'm what you would term a gay conservative. I don't even necessarily like the term conservative so sort of pinned to me. I do have a lot of conservative values despite being a gay person, so maybe that word is fine attached to me. But I think I'd ultimately think of myself as a libertarian.
Yeah.
I don't really care what anybody does. Just everybody do their thing. And live and let live.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hate gay people, you know what? I don't care. I don't really care. Just stay away from me.
Yeah.
Just so then all these people, all these gay people, for example, fighting for their rights and stuff like that, and I just have a difficult time relating. I can maybe pick out one or two instances where I say, "Oh, you did a great job there. Or, you did a great job there," but in general, no. They're just pushing up against, and when you go to the root of what they're really doing, it almost has nothing to do with equality. It's actually almost the opposite. I see them as overpowering, but I see that in all of the many liberal groups. Unfortunately, I see that in the black community, with the Black Lives Matter, of course. So you see it out there in all the different communities. Of course, communism is kind of popular. It's scary. It
is. Well, it's never quite been properly demonized in the same way as the National Socialist movement of the Nazis was.
Yeah.
I don't think that we've taught in schools properly how actually awful in practice communism has been every single time it has been tried. And that's a problem. And that's not to say that Marx didn't have some fair critiques of capitalism. There are plenty of things to critique in capitalism, but as far as a system of, there's just no comparison between the two as far as which system is resulted in more death, brutality, destruction. And is, what would you say, philosophically internally consistent, with its underlying with its what would you say, value presuppositions.
Yeah.
Capitalism beats communism in all marks there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No pun intended.
But sometimes their critique of such a thing is no more than a attempt to polarize so hard so that they can sort of sell you their crap idea of Marxism.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think
that's essentially essentially what Marx did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that applies with things even beyond communism. People they take a critique and they push it to the nth degree and use it as their polarizing concepts to shoot down the concept which they're against, the idea which they're against.
Yep.
Instead of really being fair and sure, there are things about capitalism that you can consider flawed, but at the end of the day, it's not so much that it's flawed as much as just bad practice within the system of capitalism. If you don't practice crony capitalism, you won't have it. That's easier said than done, but
Well, there is the issue. There's the issue of corruption within a system, but that's always the case.
Yeah.
Any system is inherently has a potentiality for corruption.
Yeah.
The issue with capitalism that's legitimate is that as revenue increases under capitalism, relative poverty also increases. Now that means that more people, yes, are living much better even if they are in poverty than they did even 10, 15, 20 years ago. But that's the greatest predictor for crime, for example, is relative poverty. Now we'll kind of get into that sort of aspect probably later on in our conversation when we get into minimalism and some of that. But relative poverty is a huge predictor for violent crime and things like that. So it's that comparative value judgment that causes things to become uneasy, especially in a male population when you are struggling to reach what you view as your full potentiality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's issues with capitalism, but we haven't. It's a tool. It's like anything else. It's a tool for a job, and we haven't built a better tool yet. So we can augment it, and I think there are ways worth discussing for augmenting the system that would be perhaps veering towards utilizing some redistributionist principles, but what those are, and to just say outright this would be a good thing with no negatives, or this is a negative thing with no good, is a single-sided axiomatic view of the topic. It doesn't really handle the totality of the matter with the gravity that it deserves.
And then in the climate that we're in now, it's hard to even consider such a thing, what you just said, because people, they're not truly seeking something better. They're still too busy being at war, with their opposite side, their opposer, or that which they consider their opposer. It's so as long as that war continues on, and unfortunately it is in its own way, we'll never be able to go ahead and put that on the table, which you just spoke about, which are great ideas,
right. Well,
to then start molding and making a shift for the better, and essentially you're sort of talking about some concepts of socialism and implementing them into capitalism.
Well, we have issues. We have issues with the development of technology, loss in the job market. I mean, certain jobs are being phased out faster than we can possibly imagine. That's the reality, and that is the result of capitalism in a lot of ways, because capitalism does build a volume of wealth that then drives further innovation. But innovation generally just provides people with ways to not have to work as hard, if at all. Self-driving cars could very well put truckers out of business in the next 20 years. Who knows? What do you do when you have a workforce without work, when there's just no work? That's where I think it's totally legitimate to get a conversation about things like universal basic income, in a functioning, democratic society, obviously. But we can't even get there unless we can take something on it on a whole and not just look at it. Oh, capitalism bad. Oh, anything redistributionist is inherently bad. Well, there's a plus and not minus to all things. And that's that's a lot of the goal of what, at least to speak to what I'm doing here. We want to reach across the divide and say, well, you've got ideas and I've got ideas. Let's have a conversation about our ideas and see if we can reconstitute something even better out of that.
I guess let us be the first to do that. It's got to start somewhere. So hopefully there are many versions of us out there doing similar things, and one day some generation is going to be able to pull it off. That I'd like to think that. I'm very optimistic, so that's a thing that you guys would learn about me. Very optimistic person, and backtracking slightly, in taking a break from Instagram, I wanted to make sure that I was paying attention to my own self and doing things in my life, living my life, and not being so hooked on this political crap too much.
Exactly.
So I used to be a yoga teacher years ago. I got back into yoga, so I want to be a little bit more disciplined and ritualistic with it, but I'm not. But I'm getting there. I started up again, and it's a lifesaver.
It is. It really is. It's fantastic. I've just, as I told you, I've just been starting to do it once or twice a week myself, and and maybe you can speak something to this. The demand, the physical demand of it, requires such a level of concentration that it quiets the mind.
Very good point.
And I think that's almost, that is of equal benefit as the stretching that you and the physical benefits you get out of it. So, and I think that's why yoga is practiced so heavily as an Eastern tradition of sort of the I can't remember the Kundalini aspect, you know, the more spiritual side of it.
Is that what that was?
Manifests. It is not Kundalini.
Oh, okay.
It is.
I wasn't sure what that was.
The one with the V.
Yeah, with the snake.
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay.
No, I'm not as. Okay. It's the one that my gym teaches for free on
Okay.
Saturdays and Sundays.
Fair enough.
So, but yeah, that's just not interrupt what you're saying there. But I don't know if you can speak to that. But.
I can. I have to tell you that I absolutely agree with what you just said, and I cannot quiet my mind for anything unless it's yoga, the practice of yoga. I can't sit down and meditate. I do try. My mind goes a mile a minute. I can't do it. So for me, this is the only way to really do it and quiet my mind is the practice. And a lot of people associate it with stretching. And the funny thing is, for me, I do associate it with stretching, certainly. But I associate it more with strength, depending on what poses you're doing. It requires a lot of strength because you're working with your own body weight. So...
Yeah, I don't.
I've never showed you any of my yoga poses or pictures or anything like that, right?
I don't believe so.
We'll do that. I'll show you later. But I do the forearm stand. Just all of the inversions. I love them. I'm not great at handstand though because it's just hard to keep my balance. I was actually I think it was my forearm stand that was used. It was actually scorpion pose. So it's a forearm stand, but then your legs are going back, so it looks like a scorpion, and it's either touching your head or almost touching your head. And I can't touch my head, but I can get my legs back, and I'm reaching for my head.
Very impressive.
Yeah, that was in Yoga Journal. 2015. I had taken that picture in 2012, and then 3 years later they used it.
Wow.
And but I'm the fool that signed the contract, so they didn't have to pay me anything. It's fine.
C'est la vie.
Yeah. Yeah, but yoga is incredible. I'm glad that's a ritual that's back in my life. I know that I don't want to teach it personally. It just takes too much out of me. So, and that's what I used to do before. I just want to practice it for myself and make sure that I maintain my sanity. Within the last few months, also did some dating, which was an absolute disaster. But you live and you learn. And I don't mind admitting that I'm still in the letting go process. I just recently finally gave myself permission to let go, you know. And when I say let go, I don't mean, that before I was clinging and hounding this other person and clinging on. I mean let go in here in my head.
Right.
Because they could be long gone and you don't let go in here. And so that's the kind of letting go that I'm talking about. And again, yoga's been helpful in that process. We talked about staying friends, but that's really hard. If that's going to happen, it'll be way later once I've let go. And then we see what happens.
Sure. Well, that's fair. You need the separation.
Yeah. Yes.
Obviously.
Yeah. So that's what I've been doing in my free time, or some of the things that I've been doing in my free time. And even though that wasn't fun, you have to live your life and you have to do it. And it can't be all about politics and wasting your life away in the left and right war.
It's it's just very easy to get sucked into just the hate and the vitriol. I mean, because that's most of what you're being fed by a lot of the punditry, frankly. I mean, I even myself, and I generally I don't like identifying as conservative. I don't really like identifying as liberal. I didn't
really know
myself. Yeah, well, I've kind of fluctuated, and it's been a journey as well for me.
I think me too.
But I mostly identify as a political pragmatist, and there are certainly I have certain principles that I may have principles that fall more conservative or more liberal depending on the time. The time we're in now, I think there's a greater call for, or at least the principles and the way they manifest as such, fall under that conservative category now. I think that there's a need for, what would you say, recapturing the old traditions and understanding them and bringing and revivifying them in the modern day, because we've kind of gone far, far away from everything that we've inherited in the past, and as a sin of pride, I suppose, and some of that needed to happen in order to get the level of what would you say, freedom in the society that we now have. But now it's kind of turning back, and I think it's a natural process, frankly.
Yeah, it's that pendulum kind of just going back and forth, and again, I'd like to be hopeful and think that this is sort of happening, and throughout the ages, eventually it's gonna kind of be like this a little bit. I like to think that. I mean,
that's the dream.
That's the dream. It really is the dream. So
just pray the whole damn thing doesn't break first, right?
I know.
Because that's the only other alternative is if this divide keeps getting more and more violent and nasty, then where is the society left to go? It's either polarized and stagnated, or it ends up breaking into actual violence and ruin, That's
and you don't know if that's what's gonna happen. I certainly hope not, but that's exactly why I needed a moment to just get back to living my own life, because at the end of the day, what matters, So but this is America, and we've done some pretty incredible things. We've endured so much as a nation in the last 200 years that I'm mostly confident.
I have a lot of faith in the founding principles of America. I think that the Constitution is a beautiful work.
Yeah.
It really is what separates this country from others, and I think we see that. If you really pay attention to what's going on globally, you can see that Constitution, the ability to have a contract with the state as it is, with the government, with those in power, that is inviolable. That is a huge difference, between us and, say, like Great Britain, where they don't even have free speech. That's
or France,
or Canada to the north right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
France and England are starting to mimic each other in terms of the whole refugee crisis, and also the freedom of speech. Marine Le Pen, they want to arrest her for having posted a video of problems that are being caused by refugees.
Well, they've detained foreign citizens on the basis of them wanting to conduct certain interviews or speak at certain venues, and then had them extradited or exported from the nation. It's people really underestimate how terrifying that actually is. I mean, you really get down to the root of the thinking behind something like that. That's very scary thing. That's a very scary thing.
It is absolutely scary. I mean, I was gonna say something else, but those are the perfect words. It's absolutely scary, and I have a very soft spot in my heart for Marine Le Pen. So, I've actually had dreams, by the way, of Donald Trump, and I think one of them. I think one of them was that I met him, and I was just so pleased to meet him, and and this doesn't really happen with me, but I was crying in the dream.
Really?
I was crying in the dream. Yeah, every so often I'll have dreams about him. It's so weird. Positive dreams, good dreams. Never bad dreams. But it usually revolves around an incredible admiration for him. And I noticed that, I haven't dreamt of Marine Le Pen, but I have noticed that when I look at her, and I have a similar feel. Like there's a similar warmth with Marine Le Pen. I think she's great. So.
Well, I mean, there's certainly something admirable about, regardless of what you think of him, and obviously, Trump is not a paragon of whole good or anything necessarily. I mean, that would be naive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nor is he Hitler cometh again.
Yeah.
That's also incredibly naive and absurd.
Yeah.
But there's what he has accomplished is admirable. The even just the ascension of the multiplicity of fields in which he is dominated. It's up into the point of being what you would consider, for all intents and purposes, the most powerful person on earth.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a small thing. That's not anything to I guess
to sneer at,
to brush away.
Yeah. To just to shrug at.
To do lightly, to handle with lightly.
Yeah, I think that for me, the reason I've had those feelings, because you're right, I certainly don't look at him as a savior. That's not what I'm trying to portray when I talk about the story and having those dreams and occasionally crying in my dreams. But I think one major aspect is I'll sort of look at him as like, why are you doing this? But thank God you are, because who the fuck else would do this, and so hopefully he paves the way for other people like that,
Right.
I
bravery.
I hope so. Yeah.
Certainly.
So
I want to dig into some of our topics here.
Let's do it.
Now, you wanted to speak on a film you saw recently, and I wanted to get into broader issue of Hollywood and culture and all that, and so I think that's a great entry point.
Okay.
So let's unpack this movie. And you can go ahead and give your spiel on it a little bit, and I'll jump in as I find things to jump in on, and we'll see how that goes, eh?
Sounds good. So the movie is called Call Me by My Name, right? I'm verifying that with you because I actually keep forgetting the name.
I have not seen the film, for the record, but from to the best of my knowledge, that is the name of it.
Yeah. Which I don't understand the title, Call Me by My Name. Why would I want to call anybody by my own name? But that's the name of the movie. I suppose it's supposed to be something romantic about that. Maybe.
I would just assume I would just call you by your name as opposed to what else would I call you? I don't know.
No, but call me by your name. Do you understand? That's the name of the title.
The injunction?
Yeah.
There? Okay.
Yeah, and these characters later are in bed and they're calling out their own name to the other person.
Oh, I see.
But as if calling them
by their own name. So if I were to title you Josh and you were to title me Mike.
Yes, and they're in bed and there's supposed to be this romantic thing and everything. And I was just like, no, I'm very romantic. That doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would understand that. I would not want my partner or lover to call me by their name. That just seems.
Yeah. And so
maybe I just don't get it.
This is where I definitely fall under the term gay conservative to your I don't know, your typical gay, not to belittle anybody, but because
general presupposition, I suppose, is kind of there.
My viewpoint on this film wouldn't be popular amongst them, I don't think. I had a friend who wanted me to see this film, really wanted me to see this film, and just looking at the trailer, I just knew, I was like, I don't really want to see this. I had been, I just finished my crap with the dating, and another reason I didn't want to see it is because this film is destined for heartache, and I'm just not in the mood, and I'm all about we can get into this later, but I'm all about law of attraction and keep your mind focused. What do you prefer? Keep happy. Do your best to keep happy, so that way you can multiply those moments and bring more of that into your life. But anyway, you be a good friend and you go ahead and watch this movie, and I did. And so what it is, it takes place in Italy. There's an archaeologist who's the father in the film. You have a father, a mother, and a son, and the father's an archaeologist, and coming to stay with them in Italy is the apprentice of the archaeologist.
Okay.
And anyway, make a long story short, the apprentice and the son, who's 17, which I know rubs people the wrong way because he's 17 and technically underage, but it is Italy, so nobody cares.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't have a problem with any of that, at least from that perspective. Here, no, actually, 17 here is it's actually legal.
It's actually legal.
Okay.
I think in most.
Yeah.
States, I'm not.
Right.
Not
It's
exactly.
Yeah.
I think it varies state to state.
Yeah, it's. But it also depends on how much older the other person is too. Something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
I
think it's 4 years or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have a romance, and it is genuine. It's not necessarily that.
Would you say is the age of the apprentice?
I want to say that the age of the apprentice is something like 29.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So it's a good gap. It's a good gap.
Good decade or so.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. He's definitely leans more toward a man, where the kid is a kid. I mean, I won't say he's a kid to the point of he has sex with girls in the movie too.
Mm.
So I won't say he's like a kid to the point where he's so naive to the point where he has had no experiences.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's definitely his first time having an experience with a guy, and his real feelings are for this guy. Ultimately, he falls in love with the guy.
Mm.
He straight up falls in love with the guy, and in the beginning, as things don't always pan out between them, he uses sex with girls to kind of block his emotion off.
Right.
Yeah, and but the romance is genuine, and this guy really does like him, and eventually the guy is all about him, and so it seems like the romance is going pretty good for a while, but eventually this apprentice has to go away, has to leave. He's staying there for however long he was staying there with the family. And the parents have picked up that they're having a romance. And they're very liberal parents. And they have no issue with this. And
what time period is this set in?
80s.
80s.
Yeah. Very liberal parents. I think it's fine that they don't really have an issue with them having a romance. We're stepping into where I start having issues.
Also,
yes.
So we've got 4 viewers, so of course I would encourage you guys, if you want to say hi in the chat and put any questions forward, if anything catches your ear while we're talking again, please feel free to even just say hello, and we'll say hello back. But, so, where you have issues?
So, this guy has to go, and the mother and father are thinking, it would be great if the son's name, what's his name, just so I don't call him the son, it's not Ellie, something like Ellie, we'll just say Ellie for the sake of this. So they want to send Ellie away with the apprentice, actually, so that the romance is not disrupted.
Sure.
When, to me, in reality, that's just a part of life, and if it truly does matter, maybe you'll find yourself somewhere along the way at some other point in life.
Maintain contact somehow.
Yeah,
right.
But I don't understand the concept of deliberately sending your kid with... I mean, I saw him as a stranger, but in the film, the apprentice is supposed to be almost like a family member, and so they really know who he is and stuff like that. I just don't see any of that as an excuse to do that. I mean, how many, not to get too technical, but how many family members have, abused other child family members? Just for the record, I don't know if I do know, actually, I couldn't possibly send my kid with, you know, this person so they can continue their romance. The parents seemed to know that eventually this would end, though.
Mm-hmm.
So if it would end, why just not let it
would
end?
be wildly irresponsible then to...
But so they go off together, and so this man, he's still attracted to women, and he has a genuine affection for this boy, but it's not exclusive. And listen, that's fine. He also he's always finding himself attracted to women, and as he draws toward women, sometimes the boy gets really you can tell he gets really hurt. There's been scenes where he vomits. He sees what he thinks is his boyfriend dancing with a girl, and he vomits. And then the man comes back and comes to his rescue and takes care of him. And it's like, but there's not a real understanding of what's going on. I mean, this is never going to work as a romance.
Particularly healthy.
It's not at all. But wait till we get to the end. The punchline is just incredible with the parents. Okay, so it doesn't work out. The boy is absolutely torturing himself. I'm not sure if it works out in the perception of the man. I'm not sure what he's thinking. That this is okay, that this is going on, or this was just a little, you know, side fun, a boy to have by my side for fun on the side. I'm not sure what is going through his head, but the boy's taking it much more seriously. All I can say is that the man has a genuine affection for him, but he can't give him what he wants.
Mm.
So the boy comes back, and he has this chat with his father, and this is sort of we're getting to the punchline here. And the father says, well, I know what was going on, and the reason I let you go was because, you know, you had something really, really beautiful, and I wanted everyone so afraid to feel their feelings, and I agree with that statement, but you don't send your kid off like this because you think that he needs to feel his feelings, mm-hmm. and, you know, meanwhile, this man is doing him damage, you know?
Right, well, clearly, I mean...
Yeah, and so the father seemed to know that it would turn out this way, and he just kept selling it as, and really he's not selling it to the boy. This is Hollywood, or someone with an agenda, or some director with an agenda, or some, you know, script writer with an agenda trying to sell this to people watching it. And how this is really special. You're so lucky, he says. You know, I've never had this. And I'm thinking to myself, that's what the dad says. I've never had this. You know, I should be so lucky to have. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't think that you're gay, or are you? Or I don't think that you're, you know, if you don't have those types of feelings for someone of the same sex, why would that be a goal or something that you wish had happened to you? Where are you coming from? Right. Because these things are of nature.
Right.
You know, they're not something you strive for.
He's speaking in terms of his relationship to his mother. He's basically telling his son, I don't love your mother, which is not exactly going to sit healthy psychologically with a young man either. That's exactly
what I did. I looked to my friend and said, well, what about his wife?
Yeah.
You know? And so, you know, of course I'm weird and everything to them, to other people, because, you know, he literally told me, my friend said, are you that conservative? And, like, I don't think it has anything to do with actual conservatism. You know, I am who I am, and so, you know, if people want to live their life liberally, that's fine and stuff like that, super liberally, or maybe have multiple partners and things like that. I'm not that way, so I don't really value what the dad is telling the kid, or what the dad is sort of implying about his wife. It almost implies that he has no interest in her, mm-hmm. almost, or that she's not as special. As something that he could have had with a guy. So, but to me, you know, I think it's important you know, treat someone that you're serious about as, you know, something that's very special. I mean, why would you belittle that in any way? Which is what I felt he was doing to the wife. So later on in the film, you know, we fast forward, I guess, like a few months, and I think he's coming home from school, the boy, and the phone rings, and he picks it up, and it's the guy, the apprentice. And somewhere along their conversation said, well, you know, I'm pretty sure your parents figured out, you know, figured us out. And the boy was like, well, they did. And they had a talk. And, well, he says, we had a talk about it and everything, blah, blah, blah. And he says, well, that's great. Well, you know, I'm engaged now. I'm going to get married. That's what he's telling the boy. And then somewhere in the conversation, he proceeds to, call me by your name, call me by your name. And they have this little whisper on the phone of the romantic time, like harking back to when they were in bed and calling each other their own names.
Right.
And they were on the phone, and this guy, the kid is doing it, and then the last scene basically is him tearing up while he's doing it. And eventually they say goodbye, and he hangs up, and he's crying. And that's the film. So it's like teaching people to
be wildly irresponsible.
That's what I said before, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly it. Wildly irresponsible, and, you know, selling it as you need to feel these feelings. I'm all for feeling your feelings.
Sure.
I think enough people don't. But to put yourself into situations to have this type of thing where you're just torturing yourself, it's a lack of self-respect, I think. And then on top of that, your parents are helping you do it. And that was my issue with this film.
And so, I guess, what do you think was the underlying theme that was trying to be communicated there? I mean,
you know,
obviously, I have a sense of your visceral reaction to it. But what would you say
my reaction
was the intention put forth by the people who constructed the story?
Well, I go two ways with that. One is I kind of don't know, because art films today are so stupid that they are designed to be nonsensical. And the other way that I go is that too, that they're so stupid that it's designed to be nonsensical, and they want to sell you this, like, to make it chic, or that it's the thing to be that nonsensical, or to put yourself in such irresponsible situations. I'm pretty convinced that they want to sell you that. And the left is, you know, aside from the war that's going on with the left and right, the left are doing a good job just by themselves, just like self-imploding.
Yes.
And I think that this is an example of that, and they don't even know that they're doing it to themselves. They just think that it's if they can get all these people to follow them, that somehow that they're gonna be all right, that somehow they're gonna be stronger against the right. And at the end of the day, they're just collecting victims.
Right.
Is what I think. I'm not saying that in any way to be mean, or for that to be some sort of, you know, statement of war, and that's how we're gonna get you, left.
Well, it is sort of. I mean, it is sort of the aggrandization, if that's probably not even a word, but of what. And this is sort of an endemic of a lot of what you would probably call left-leaning talking points is of victimhood. It's elevation of victimhood.
Yes.
As
yes.
As if victimhood is within itself a virtue.
Yes.
As opposed to it being.
You hit it right on the knob.
Tragedy being just tragedy.
You hit it right on the knob. It's so. I think that that's what they're selling. They're selling the glamorization of victimhood. You know.
Yeah. Well,
and
I mean,
gays feel like victims, as it is. So.
And in some ways, you know, manifests across history. There's some justification, at least in the history, of certain things that have happened within towards the gay community, the dog. I mean, it's a very complex issue to unpack, and I would not want to tread into saying anything that would be
offensive.
Not offensive, but grossly mischaracterized of my actual viewpoints. And it's very difficult to go into that, but being a victim does not grant you moral virtue. It just makes you a victim.
Yeah.
And that should be addressed, obviously, and we can have a conversation about doing something about it, but we don't give merit badges for it.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. I mean, I can, you know, find things in history that I did find inspiring in the gay community, but I don't have to drive it and hammer at it. But just as an example, the Stonewall riots,
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing a documentary on that and actually kind of feeling just slightly empowered. And just like, oh, well, good for them. You know, I didn't live that time. They did it for me, so good. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and from my perspective, I know not everyone feels this way, but I felt growing up, I never felt victimized. I felt that I was born at a great time to be myself. I was born and raised in New York City, so I came from a liberal city already. It never was a problem for me. Now I know that other people did have, they did face their own problems and stuff like that, but I was lucky enough not to, and then on top of that, I have the perception that I lived at a pretty good time. And it's even better now, you know? So, but of course now the problem is the hammering away at previous injustices and almost some of them are at a war with straight people. Some of them are, yeah. And I've never felt that. I've been the same. If I get defensive, I'm the same way I am with a straight person as I am with a gay person. Just defensive in the same way. It has nothing to do with because you're straight or because you're gay.
It's almost as if you don't judge somebody by their immutable characteristics.
No. Yeah.
What a concept.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there are straight liberal people that I'm going to have disagreements with.
Sure.
Not because they're straight, but, you know, they want to have, you know, they like polygamy. And they're free to do that. But, you know, I'm going to say, hey, I don't really... What are you doing that for? You
The
know, that's
normalization
gonna
of it. And, I
you
mean,
know?
we could speak to the actual psychological issues involved and statistics involved, but that would be unpacking a whole other world.
Yeah.
But as an example, sure.
Mm-hmm.
So as to the film, then,
Yeah.
you feel like the underlying messages that really rubbed you the wrong way, the themes there were sort of this abandonment of responsibility, because it does seem to me that, I mean, parents at least not having a certain level of concern I mean, we're not talking somebody who's 35 dating somebody who's 45 here, you know? We're talking 17-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, versus a 29-year-old. I mean, I'm not even 29 yet, but where I am now versus where I was a decade ago, I'm 27.
I've forgotten that about you, by the way.
Yeah, I forget it all the time too. It's actually getting pretty bad. People ask me my
when you
age,
said
I'm
that-
already to the point where I'm like, right.
When you said that just now, I was like, you're not?
Yeah, right.
But I mean it in a complimentary way. Not that you look old or anything.
Alcohol's a hell of a drug.
No, because I'm always making cracks about 20-year-olds.
Right. Well, me too. I don't. I have issues relating to most people my own age, so that's not again a
How old are you again,
self-aggrandizing
if you don't mind me
statement.
asking?
27.
That's good. That's a good age. You're, you know.
Yeah, it's nice. I'm enjoying it. I'm
Yeah.
enjoying the climb.
It's a good midpoint. You're still in your 20s, but you're up there, so there's that level of maturity that you don't have to have because many 27-year-olds don't. But you probably should, and I think you do. So.
As I see it, I'm in my prime, and it's all uphill. It's great. It's
Yeah.
I've never been in a better time in my life than I am
Yeah.
right now. That's not to say there's not struggle, but it's a good time.
Yeah.
I really am very, very grateful to where I've come to. But to speak to it, yeah, the concept, I mean, first of all, of parents not at least having some trepidation or concern about their 17-year-old child being involved with a 29 or, well, we'll just say a near 30-year-old man. That already seems to me somewhat concerning. I mean, obviously, if I can understand the parents allowing the relationship to continue, but to be quite so laissez-faire, I suppose, about it, seems to me fairly reckless, because obviously an individual approaching 30 and their level of development comparative to a 17-year-old, it's just not the same.
Well, they Von Voyaged the kid on the train when they both hopped on the train.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't.
So the kid did eventually leave, or?
Yes, the kid left with
the
man.
Really?
And the parents literally put him on the train and said goodbye to both of them. And so that's another one of the issues that I have with the whole thing, is sort of, glorifying or glamorizing this that the parents did, that it's such a great thing that they did to allow their kid to
release your 17-year-old child into the arms of essentially a stranger. I mean,
I don't care what anybody says. But not just that. Someone who's at least 10 years older than you, or 10 years older than the kid. I just couldn't imagine. I mean, my parents would never do that, and
Sure.
I would never do that.
No.
As a parent, I mean, I'd be much too protective of my kid.
Yeah, that
actually.
to me is just such a leap. I mean, to allow the relationship to go forward being one thing, but then to just abandon your child, essentially.
That's what it feels like. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty gross. So yeah, it does seem. It's hard to assume what was going through the mind and heart of the individuals crafting the piece.
Right.
But I think you can get an intimation of that from any piece of art, and it is a piece of art for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And it seems, and I'm trying to kind of get an idea of what it is that really is going on underneath the surface that is so bothersome for you, especially, and I would imagine probably in many ways for me as well. I would relate watching such a movie. The abandonment of parental responsibility, which I think we are seeing in the culture. We've seen pretty bad outturn of that in the culture, and it's being promoted pretty heavily, and it is being promoted pretty heavily by what would be considered the more left leaning end of things, or liberal or progressive, or however you want to frame that. I could say I can be sympathetic to the two individuals, to the child and the man, to some degree. I mean, they're flawed people. Who knows, what is going on really underneath the surface, and, we're messy. So I have some sympathy to the actual relationship itself as such. It's tough. But then to think the behavior that you saying of the man to call the kid
At the end,
that when you're getting engaged, again, just seems very irresponsible. Very irresponsible.
Yeah, because
especially if you're supposed to be getting engaged and you're engaging in a phone call with your former lover who is very, very young. You should know that it's going to have a hurtful effect on him, and neglecting your partner that you're supposed to be getting married to.
So there's double right there. There's a double whammy.
To me, that just really reeks of irresponsibility and really sort of corruption of character. You know, really, really a pretty nasty flaw.
And I'm seeing this film. I'm thinking like, this is the kind of thing that people want to make the norm. I mean, liberals love this movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so just to be fair, amongst my gay friends, it's about half and half. That some people hate it and some people think that it's either great or just fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's about half and half. And let me be more accurate about that. They're not really my friends, but people that I know.
Sure.
Acquaintances and things like that.
Sure.
I think my closest friends either didn't see the film or didn't like it, or when they did hear about it, they thought it sounded horrible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, we got an underlying theme of irresponsibility. We got an underlying theme of the abandonment of parental duty, of lacking in moral judgment on the part, I think I would say, of the apprentice in many cases. And what do you feel like is the broader issue in that this is a story that is being told on a mass level? What do you feel is the problem in that? Because I think that would help kind of segue us towards talking about Hollywood and culture and storytelling and kind of digging into that.
Ask it again. I noticed that. Someone had a question for us.
Well, hi. Nice you to hang out. So the question is, hello, what do you mean by abandoned? He didn't call his son. He didn't check up on him. I'm asking because I have not watched the movie. So what occurred was it was a relationship between an older man and a younger boy, a 17-year-old and a 29, 30-year-old that had occurred. And I don't know if I would call either of them gay or bisexual. It's hard to. I guess it seems I didn't see the film.
Yeah, they definitely. You got the sense that the film didn't want to label them.
Right.
Which is a very popular thing right now.
Fine. But what happens at the end is after they engage in this love affair and it's all this messiness. Eventually, the older man leaves and is getting engaged to, I assume, to a woman?
Yes.
To a woman, but then chooses to call the boy who's back home and tell him about this and then try to play with each other in such a way over the phone as they would have when they were involved with each other, which again just seems very irresponsible, very disrespectful of the young man's feelings.
I'm paraphrasing, but it was sort of like, you're very special,
right.
You know, call me by your name, and they start whispering
and
that
they start playing this game again. Right. So it seems like it's very disrespectful to the feelings of the young man as well as to his actual fiancée for him to be doing that sort of thing. I mean, I take issue with that. So from a moral perspective, from an ethical, I guess, standpoint, that doesn't seem
right
the proper way to behave. I mean,
and that's where I can agree with you. I mean, I'm sure we agree on plenty of things, but that's how I see it as well. It's just not how you go around. What's the word I'm looking for? Treating people, but I'm looking for another word. That's not how you handle people. That's you have more respect than that all the way around for people in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
empathy, a little more empathy. Yeah, I mean, and I don't think it is a huge cognitive leap for a grown man to assume that calling this young man at this stage in life after everything that's happened and then not only to give him the information of being engaged, which is one thing, but then also to then push the paradigm into that those romantic waters again.
Yeah.
That's really, I think, where I would take issue.
Yeah.
It's really, I don't think it's a whole lot for him to have known that would have a huge effect on this kid, right? On some level, and that it would probably damage him, you know. if most likely, and how.
Well,
I mean, and he's a 17-year-old kid. How emotionally adjusted could he possibly be? I mean, come on.
yeah.
That's to assume. No, I don't think any of us were particularly well adjusted as teenagers emotionally, at least comparative to where this man would be, where we would be now.
Would you pass me my backpack for a second? I don't know that I packed my charger, but I have another one at my friend's house. But it
Technical
is,
stuff.
Yeah, technical.
So I don't know if
stuff.
that helps answer your question to some degree. Feel free to let us know if that helps kind of flesh out the question for you. Or flesh out the answer to the question.
I think I screwed myself good.
I may have a charger if you need
An
one.
iPhone charger?
I may have one.
Okay.
I'll have to check. Wait, you know what? Actually, I'll have to check right here.
Okay.
How convenient.
I do have one at my friend's house who, he said he was going to see this live feed actually, but
Yeah.
that's a good start.
I'll
Bring it up to be able to plug in.
Yeah. That'll do the trick.
Awesome. Alright guys, so I'm going to let this live feed go for a little bit. We did a good hour while my phone is charging, and we can get back to it later. So, and thanks. Can I unplug one of these? Which one's good to unplug? If
The the bigger one.
the bigger
That one's fine. The top one.
Alright, so let's continue on. Sorry for the
Right.
little hiccup.
So, with that, let's transition into. So, what do you think the effect? What do you think is the negative effect of the propagation of this sort of story and the and it being elevated? I keep using aggrandized tonight. Being elevated in such a way, as a masterwork of drama and fiction, and something to be admired. What do you think? What do you think is the negative aspect to that?
What they're teaching our young people, or how they're trying to sort of indoctrinate our young people. I think that's I think it's not good. You know, I was gonna say it's a problem. Ultimately, I don't think it's a problem because I think at the end of the day, sanity is gonna win.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along the line, I
It hasn't
really do
always.
think so. I know, but this is America, so we have to.
Thank God
You
bless
know,
that.
But you know, I do know some liberal people that don't necessarily think that that's all that great. You know, that the message in that movie is not all that great. And, you know, they may be liberal, but, you know, they prefer their one partner and to not send out their kid to be hurt, you know. So I think sanity's going to win in the end, but I think confused people that are searching for their inner freedom and their, you know, their liberty down deep inside because they're so confused or someone's convinced them that they don't have liberty and all this stuff, they're going to do themselves, they're going to do a number on themselves in their head. And they could potentially face emotional issues such as that they really don't need to, but simply have, you know, like a self-fulfilled prophecy, have done to themselves because, you know, it's been made glamorous in a film. And it's been made virtuous. You know, I've felt this, you know, I've been through this. I've had these feelings. You could have some pretty intense feelings just from having a normal relationship.
Mm-hmm. Oh, certainly.
So, you know.
Well, you know, gosh, there's a lot to unpack, I think, in the sort of philosophy that underlies that narrative. And we could go into that. On the one hand, I mean, I think we do see that manifest in this sort of movement towards, like, talking about transitioning children, for example. And as if that's, I mean, if we want to talk on a political topic, you know,
yeah.
the transgender issue of children transitioning, and how there's a big push towards that becoming a norm.
Yeah.
I think is really, I mean, really insidious, and I think that's sort of the kind of ethos that's underlying the statement that is going on in the film of children being able to make these complex moral decisions, these ethical choices, these things that can have deep, lasting impact on the rest of their life, like being sent off with an older man.
I just think it's more concerning that the parents, push this to happen.
But that's
not just
exactly
allowed
what
it, but pushed
but that's exactly what we see happening with like the transitioning children movement, is that they're assuming that the child has any real grasp on what they're dealing with, and assuming that the child can make the decision that they need to change themselves physically in gender from one to the other. Children go around thinking they're Superman and trying to jump off of roofs. You're gonna let them? Like,
right.
And I think that's endemic to a greater issue at the heart of our culture, where parents don't want to oppress their children, because that's it.
They're very confused
that's really
about
what
that.
it is. That's really what it is. Is they feel that, like, if I give my child guidance, if I create a framework of things that that behavior that can and cannot be tolerated, I'm not allowing the full potentiality of the person to manifest. And sure, there's some truth in that, right? But that's to make that.
But you need structure.
Well, exactly. But
you need
structure because you need to understand where boundaries are in order to navigate society, and in order to have any sort of complex relationship to other people.
The child hasn't really figured out if they want to have a sex change.
Exactly.
They haven't really figured that out.
Well, they don't. You don't understand the paradigm of that choice, which will affect you for the rest of your life. You will never be able to have your own children. Really, you'll never. I mean, what happens in 20 years when you're a completely different person? You know, you're 7 now, and when you're 20, you suddenly now you're going to want to be a boy again or something. It's not, and as far as what people do as adults, that's their business. Whether or not I can say it, I think it's the most psychologically healthy option for people, and for some it may be, but I don't think it's the majority.
I don't think it's the majority at all.
But it's irrelevant. People make their choices. They live with the consequences. But
I think it's a very small percentage where such a thing is what's the word I'm looking for? Relevant to actually do. I don't think there's very many cases at all, and
it is an overwhelming minority of the population. Obviously, I mean, the transgender population is very, very.
Yeah.
I mean.
But about 80% of them are suicidal.
Okay.
So there's something wrong. There's something wrong with them, unfortunately, and this is why they're suicidal. And the transgender thing is a Band-Aid, an attempted Band-Aid, which will never work for their happiness. It will never work.
It's I'm sure there are cases where it does, but there are certain people in the public eye, like Blair White or Theron.
I was just going to say Blair White.
I
appreciate
who
her.
are, completely well adjusted, and for whatever reason that
it works for them.
But the statistics indicate no decrease in suicidality, and sometimes an increase after transitioning. So I mean, that's just not trying to be cruel towards anybody. That's just looking at the numbers and going, I want these people to have a better life, and we have to really be able to look at everything objectively here. But that aside, the fact that we've kind of developed this, that there's even a culture or a push culturally around children being able to make that choice is, it's child abuse in my mind, frankly, but it's really quite terrifying, and I think it is part of the issue that we're abandoning the parenting as something that also has to say no. And yes, you are going to oppress your child from being everything they want to be in the same. But if we didn't have law, I mean, we oppress serial killers too from manifesting the whole beauty of the individual, and imposing that upon society too. So it's really that, I think, is the sort of philosophical presupposition lying at the heart of something like saying, yes, my child can choose to, at 17, to leave home with a 30-year-old man and what, even because he needs to feel his feelings. It's, maybe buy him a piano. Maybe help give him a channel to work through his own feelings. Maybe talk to him about his identity. Maybe actually be a parent, step up, as opposed to just abandoning that to essentially abandoning it to another person, because that's really what's going on. It's so there's that seems to me to be some of what's underlying that, and then the feeling that it's of value and romantic that this man reaches out at the end as well. It's really pretty sick. Pretty sick that a man of that age can't understand that what he's doing is harmful. Ultimately more harm than good. He's too. Well, it's the elevation of emotions, right? Above all, it's like emotions are good. Feel your feelings.
Yeah.
But be a master of yourself, right?
That's what they're trying to push.
Right. You don't, just because you feel a thing doesn't mean that you get to act in such a way that hurts someone else. So.
Right, but that's for them, for the creators of this film, that's besides the point.
Right.
The point is to apparently feel all your feelings and don't behave accordingly, basically.
Yeah, just
because there's some sort of prize at the end for that.
Behave according to how you feel in the moment.
Yeah.
As opposed to, again, it's an irresponsibility.
Well, I would just never feel that way in the moment. So I'm already right there, just having trouble relating, because if my affection is for a person, it is for a person. So, I don't see how I could be playing this game with anybody, where I've got someone that I had a romance with previously, which was apparently really deep, certainly at least for the kid, and then I'm also engaged. But that's the creators of this film. That's what they want to sell to you as deep. Just all of that in itself is deep. This is deep. This is different. He has these real feelings for this young man. But he's also engaged,
Right.
This is life. This is normal. This is life. And that's what they're trying to...
Well, and I think the issue is not that isn't the case. I mean, sure, it is deep, and it is normal, and it is life. People are complicated and conflicted when they make choices. I mean, and something like that could certainly happen.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't, it's... I think the fundamental issue lies, and this gets towards kind of where we're heading when we talk about storytelling and the issue with Hollywood, who is kind of our greatest storytellers, right? As they have become. We'll see much longer that lasts. I think we have a lot of issues going on in that part of the world right now.
I've been detached from the entertainment industry for a long time. A long time. And I have friends in music and things like that. One of my friends, David Vernon, he's done live feeds with me before. He might be watching, or he will at some other point, if he's not now.
Hi, David.
He's seen the interviews I did with you before. He is an incredible cabaret singer. He's won awards in New York City for what he does, and he's incredible. And I kind of struggle with some of my artistic friends. I'm like, you know, do your thing, you should, because you're an artist. This is really who you are. But I guess I'm sure I'm an annoyance to them because I will say, you know, watch what you get caught up in, though. And, you know, just know where you're putting your energy and be careful.
There's huge money in the arts if you make it, right? And the ability to monetize a passion like that. And I am an artist as well, so I understand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's kind of the siren song, right? I mean that's the call. Because obviously, if there's something that you would do for free and you can make money off of doing it, well, of course you want that to be the case, right? I mean, I understand that very, very well. But and we can talk about how this kind of can loop back into sort of capitalism and some of the issues that come out of it's not capitalism as such, but our presuppositions philosophically in a capitalist system, when utilizing a capitalist system, right? Huge potentiality for income growth.
Yeah.
Movie stars get paid $25 million for maybe 6 months' work on a film, right?
And yet
That's
half
insane.
of them want to push communism.
Right. Yeah,
Some of them really do.
So they think. And they'll be the first ones in the gulags. In any case, with that, we've also developed a highly secular culture in which and this gets more into sort of a spiritual, sort of theosophical maybe look at things.
Yeah, that's where I have a lot of things to say too.
And we can definitely get into that. And I think you know if you don't get down to that, the bottom of that first, it's really hard to understand the rest of your value presuppositions upon which everything. Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, because what is the spiritual problem? It's the problem of being itself, right? Existence, the existential question. We've since the scientific revolution, since the sort of loss of the Christian dogma in the West, for example, and that's just an example, but we've become highly secularized, where we tend to believe that all that matters is physical matter. All that exists is the observable reality as measured quantifiably by science, right?
Yeah.
And that is somehow a way in which we can make a value judgment about something. So when you do that, you suddenly, like you say, people be well, careful what you get caught up in. Well, we take like a look at what's happening in Hollywood. So you've got people who, same case, they want a kid wants to, from podunk wherever, wants to be an actor, and gets picked up by an agent, and things start happening. And next thing you know, she's on Weinstein's casting couch, and it's okay, because there's no ghost in the machine. You know, you don't have a spirit and essence, a valuable soul. You know, you are not, you know, a unique center of the universe. So you violating your own value judgment of yourself, say by doing something that you would not do with an individual like, say, a Weinstein, not a very obviously not a very attractive guy. Obviously, probably not much going on for his personality if he had to manipulate women into that sort of situation, you know, and then try to golden carrot them with the promise of fame and fortune. That's pretty despicable on the face of it. But obviously, the women have to take responsibility for them choosing to do that as well. I mean, I'm not victim.
I think some of them don't have a right to complain.
It's
called Hollywood. You know,
it's called taking responsibility for react. Yeah. It's a business transaction at that point. But that's the problem. Is it's a business transaction. We've degraded the individual essence, the sexual act especially, down to something that is merely fun, merely a plaything. And it is fun, obviously, and that's just a single manifestation of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
but in that you find these people now are horribly damaged. And I think that that belief is manifest in the stories that are being told by these people, a lot of these people today. There's nothing inspiring to most of what comes out
Of Hollywood?
of Hollywood anymore.
Yeah.
It's a product, just as the individuals who are in it are just a product meant to push another product. And that's linked into the issue of with some issues with capitalism. Some of what Marx did talk about is a detachment from work and loss of identity and things like that. But I think deeper than that is an understanding that there is more to life than it's the eternal question of all of religion, for example, or all of spiritual seeking. Is there more to life than this earth per se, as it physically manifests? And that's and I think you see in stories that really try to tell you something bigger, something greater. You know, those things that really grip you, and those things that kind of turn you off. That's I don't know if you have anything to say to that, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about when we talk about, you know, these movies that are being made, and the culture in Hollywood, and how it shows in the quality of their work that there's nothing. A lot of them aren't really that gripping or anymore. No. They might be deep. They might be a manifestation of things that actually happen, but they're not admirable. There's nothing admirable in it, and that's a problem because for me anyway, for somebody who really deeply respects storytelling and has spent a lot of my time studying, you know, great works, and portraying them too.
Yeah.
Stories matter because the stories we tell are a distillation of a pattern of behavior of individuals, and it's almost like and when we tell it on a mass scale like a AAA movie, it's a model for behavior. It becomes a model for behavior. So people act out the stories that they read. They act out that behavior that was modeled within it. Mm-hmm. So when you see a superhero, you learn a good way to act valorously and forthrightly, and that's good if it's not trying to push some political agenda, you know, to its own end, because then it's not art, it's just propaganda. And I think that there's a huge loss in stories that create a really in really paying attention to the stories that really matter, which are those that show people, not only show an essence of human condition, because there is room for that, but how to act forthrightly in spite of that condition. So like not calling the kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Would have been a and being loyal to your fiance would have been a pretty forthright decision in spite of the fact that you are conflicted and dealing with these horrible, you know, or
emotions. Calling the kid and saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, this turned out this way.
Sure.
And this is what I've come to now.
Sure.
This is my new realization." You know, if I was writing the film, it would probably end up something like that. Mm-hmm. You know, to end it with some, you know, a depiction of some morals. But I think that there isn't. I'm just really unimpressed with Hollywood, and I don't recall for a long time, you know, something useful coming out of Hollywood. And I literally felt this way before the last election. I literally felt this way. Mm-hmm. So it's very ironic to me, but also very kind of a little pleasing to my ego as I see Hollywood falling apart. I just thought, you know, how great is this? This needs to happen, because I knew for a long time that there was something wrong with it. Mm-hmm. That whole election, for me, it was kind of like, I don't know, like a big.
It was a turning point.
It was a turning point
for everyone.
But for me, on a personal level, it was kind of like a little bit of an I've arrived, maybe coming full circle, There's so many things in my personal life that I just felt could have gone better.
Sure.
Had the political climate been on my side. And I don't know if we should get into some of that stuff, but there are just I've always had a big mouth, and just as an example. And there was a time where I was literally on the front cover of every newspaper in New York City.
I remember you mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we talked about this.
And so I couldn't speak. You know, I couldn't speak my mind. And so when Donald Trump came and just broke that down, I said, "Oh, I've been waiting for something like this to happen."
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's going to pave the way for people being able to not be PC, and to be able to speak and say something, whatever it is that's on their mind.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that. I definitely thought, and this is again before the election, that wow, the gay community is going to run themselves amok. I had a difficulty relating to any of that. It was a problem. It was a problem. I was like, I'm just probably going to be single forever because I don't really understand these people.
Living in New York can be difficult if you have a more complex worldview than literally Hitler.
Yeah. And all of that, I felt those things and whatever, but that's not true. I'm sure, when the time is right, the right scenario is going to present itself, So I'm sure none of that's really true, but I just, even with that, I had a big problem with it because I knew internally that, that community and certain liberal, I didn't call them liberal at the time, but certain liberal groups, that they were really problematic to our society. Really problematic.
Certainly. Some,
Yeah.
I mean, some are pushing very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
What would we say? The presuppositions within their philosophy that they're acting out are dangerous. It's dangerous. It is dangerous.
Yeah.
No, full stop.
And so this new era, basically did a few things. One, it started to define problems, and I hate to label things, but now I could define a problem as, well, it's because they're liberal or leftist. I could now define it where before I couldn't really define it. I just knew something was wrong with these people.
Right.
So now we could define it. We could dissect it better and maybe understand it a little better. And we had an actual movement against that, which I believe, just taking a look at all of that, it is a form of corruption in itself. I mean, the hardcore left is corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
The really
super
left
and I
swing.
think you could argue the far right. I mean, the hardcore
Oh,
right
sure,
as
sure,
well. Yeah.
sure. But we're kind of like used to that. We know that already. We
Right.
know, we've always known that.
Well, I think the issue is that on the left, it manifests as. On the right, the corruption is very, very clear because it is manifest in a very, and I think this is endemic to the sort of behavioral traits of the right and the sort of personalities on the right and just how that manifests in their political worldview and their statements. It's much more, it's a much harsher outlook on reality in many ways. I mean, people on the right are less agreeable. People on the right are more conscientious. So as such, generally speaking, they're going to be a little bit more every man for himself, right?
Yeah.
Whereas on the left, the presupposition is that everything is coming from a place of compassion and altruism.
Yeah.
And that's very, very tempting to people because obviously we want to be a compassionate, caring society. We want to take care of those who cannot take care of themselves. That's, of course we do. You know, I mean, if the society is not completely corrupt and we're living in enough state of abundance where, you know, I can walk down to 7-Eleven and get a burrito if I need to, and I'm not going to starve to death tonight, you know, then we're in a place where we say, yes, let me help my neighbor. But of course I want to do it on my terms. That's more the rights, not the far right, but the right view.
And the whole compassion thing is what a lot of people end up, you know, falling for.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't realize they don't see the bigger picture of what's the problem with the left.
Because there's tyranny and compassion as well, right?
How could you go wrong with that?
I mean,
you know, that's
kind
of how they look at it.
Exactly. Well, exactly. It's take any given topic. We talk gun control. It's don't you care about the children. We talk
yes.
LGBTQ rights. Well, shouldn't people just be able to love who they love? It's like, okay, sure, but we need the world's more complex. Let's unpack some of these things and understand that there's a give and take here, and when we open Pandora's box, we don't know what's going to come out. So let's really know what the hell we're contending with first. But I mean, it's like it's like when we talk about the story and we're talking about the child and the way the parents treated them. They treated that child very, very compassionately.
That's debatable, but I know it should.
But that would be the worldview, is that, well, they allowed him to be him and flower into whatever he was.
There's the compassion part.
There's the compassion, and if he loves someone, well, sure. But so there's a negative manifestations of compassion.
But I see a different compassion as well. I see a compassion of I'm going to protect you.
Right, exactly. But that's the other thing. Then there's a compassion that you would say is inherently more manifest in the sort of the right wing sort of ideology or political alignment.
That's certainly how
what would be compassionate to me would not be to allow you to do whatever you want, but to stop you from doing whatever you want, because you're going to harm yourself. And that's the more patriarchal side of things, as opposed to the compassionate mother. That's the more rigid father, right? The balance between the two. Even
though it was the father who had that chat with the son.
Yeah. Right. But you understand that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. I know what you mean. The masculine, feminine roles.
So that's I think a lot of the issue that lies. I mean, and understanding that duality, and we don't really. I mean, it's very, very, and it might be ingrained in people. It's very, very difficult for those two sides to communicate with one another, because what they view
the left and the right.
Yeah, because what their views on compassion are two very different things in many ways. You know?
Yeah. I mean, this is a perfect example of that. Because my idea of compassion in that situation is a different concept.
No.
You know, I was a really loved child. I was always shown affection, and protected. So that kind of situation would have never happened to me. So I'll tell you a funny story just for the shits and giggles of it. But it does tie into this. When I came out to my mom, I decided to come out because I had I achieved my first relationship that I knew was gonna go further. And it did. It lasted for 2 years. And so her thing, so these are 2 examples of compassion from my mom in one moment. She said, yeah, I mean, it's somewhat surprising, but, you know, I thought that might be possible, and I just want you to be happy. So that's the first thing. Are you happy? It's like, okay, good. That's all that matters. And then if something goes wrong, you just let me know, though. That's what she did. So you have these 2 levels of compassion here, because she's accepting who I am on the spot, but then she's also protecting me. She wasn't gonna let me. It's not like in this film where she's just gonna give me away to somebody, you know. And I was an adult already, so I mean, I was a late bloomer. I was about to turn 21. So, adult, and that was that story. It's kind of funny.
So it's a duality of compassionate support as well as, protection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like the right answer. Right.
So it gives, it's an example of a small, example of my upbringing, and that movie didn't jive with me whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't sound like my cup of tea either.
Yeah.
Though I don't watch many movies at all these days either.
Yeah.
I'm like you. I'm kind of disconnected from the whole thing. I just find it distasteful. And kind of like when we talked with when the latest political cycle happened.
Yeah.
I came to New York as an actor, or may still do some. We'll see. I'm kind of disenchanted with that world because of a lot of what I'm seeing there. So I was very, very plugged in and very, very much. What would you say? Not it wouldn't be idolatry, but admiring of many, many people in that world. And then, for me, what was interesting, and it was kind of alongside a lot of my political awakening, I started more as a Sanders person at the very, very beginning. Then I learned a few things because it was interesting. It was so fascinating to me. What the hell is going on here? Because we've got Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and Bernie Sanders. Those are the people. Something strange is happening here, and you've got Trump, who's just, in spite of my personal presupposed belief what would happen, just trouncing his opponents on the Republican side. You've got Hillary Clinton, who I've never really liked. I've always found her to be corrupt and a liar,
Yes.
very, very obviously so. And so I could not respect somebody who could blatantly lie to my face in such a way, and so obviously, and with such a sense of moral superiority.
Yeah.
I just couldn't, on a personal level, viscerally respect them. And then Sanders, who was saying a lot of very nice pie in the sky things. As I've started getting more interested in the study of philosophy and the study of politics and the study of history, and I suppose I've always been interested, but really digging into it, I started going, well, I don't think socialism is a good thing, and now I've got such a point of having looked into it that's like it's a really bad thing. Like it's not a good thing. And it's been historically proven as such.
Yeah.
So I've got the data. I've got the Gulag Archipelago, I think, right there. To anyone who, that's about enough of a testament, I think, for me. But yeah, as such, so I really had I couldn't vote for Clinton. So that only gave me one option, and then seeing the way that celebrities were acting as sort of these moral arbiters, demonizing entire vast swaths of the population.
There's an agenda
Certainly. I mean, and that's a whole other thing to unpack, but I mean, I found it very repugnant because I just thought you're morally criminalizing roughly 50% of the population of the nation that feeds you, that puts you where you are. That's shows to me for artists of all people such a lack of empathy, and for people who seem to think that their job is to communicate, to tell a story and communicate a portion of the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
A fundamental lack of understanding of what that condition is, that you could just call, say, the entire center of a nation a bunch of backwoods rednecks who don't know they're born, and are basically KKK members. It's like, that's really disturbing.
They're really out of touch, because then there's me.
Oh, sure.
So, what was I going to say about that? have lost their ability to do storytelling because they've reached a place where they really do think that they're better than us. They really, unfortunately, they really do think of themselves as the elite, and they're really not.
Well, they're no more so than any. They're no more arbiters of moral virtue than anyone else.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And they're in the in crowd, and frankly, many of them are connected to politics genuinely, and they, you know, I consider them part of the swamp.
Sure. Well, I mean, yeah.
So.
Well, it's all money changing hands, right? It's all interests.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, you could get into the various interrelations between, say, Weinstein and the Clintons, for example.
Or even the Obamas.
Correct. But, and there certainly is an agenda in all of that, too. And I mean, it's a complex system, you know, to what degree that wouldn't be the case for anyone. It's like, I care more about my coworkers and the people who help me put food on my plate too, right? On a day-to-day basis. So what is of interest to them, their problems, their needs are of interest to me as well. So in their world that may be somewhat manifest as such, but when you stand up on a stage and deliver some oration that demonizes a group of people and aggrandizes your great political philosophy, and you're met with applause, and we're supposed to assume that actually means you know what you're talking about and are educated enough to really speak on such a subject, and we should be following policy based upon the things you say. That seems like not only a misstep in critical thinking, but a misplacement of virtue as such. You know.
Yeah.
It's because there's nothing virtuous per se in it. It's not brave. You know, it's not. You're saying, you're delivering a speech to a couple of 100,000 people who agree with you. That's not brave. Standing up and doing the thing that's not popular in the face of adversity. That's brave. That's essentially the textbook definition of bravery, right?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and that's unfortunate. That, at least when I look at events happening on the left, there's nothing genuine about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just as you were saying, all of the the award shows and things like that. It's, you know, I can't watch them because you're just having your these people are just having their like anti-life party.
Mm-hmm.
That's like all it is. Can't you guys just relax and have some fun?
Right.
You know? Because all those things that they're doing in the award shows, it's completely out of insecurity. There's no way you're going to convince me that you're having fun.
Well, you know,
let it go.
One moment. I just want to pick this up in case anybody is contacting about the stream. I want to make sure that we get anybody who is interested in on the conversation. Of course, if anyone watching would like to posit a piece to the conversation or has any questions, please, since we got this one moment.
I'm surprised that we have taken it as long as we have. I mean, we can I'm
impressed.
impressed.
We still have two things.
We still have two things. Yeah,
here.
we're gonna have to tackle it.
Nothing important.
I'm impressed.
But
we obviously should do it again.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to tap into a little bit in the next one, maybe a little bit of sort of a conspiracy theory. Maybe we can get into that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with a few.
Well, some are true, not all of them, and so sometimes I want to like dive in there and say, well, yeah, well then there's this about Hollywood that's a little bit more conspiracy oriented.
I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Well,
I mean, you know, obviously.
I don't think it would be appropriate for now,
sure.
but
I mean,
I think
in the future.
I think. Yeah.
When we want to break into that.
When we want to kind of like, you know,
but like
open it up a little more.
Say the insecurity factor in celebrity and how that seems to be a manifestation of that. I think that is the case. I've been doing a lot of thinking and writing and on the topic of the psychology attached to something like a phenomenon like celebrity.
Yeah.
Especially on the level as it exists now, because it's really not like anything for which human beings have been adapted, you know?
The celebrity lifestyle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, this is a very unique time in
Yeah.
human history, in human civilization, where an individual can have an influence on an entire globe of people, essentially. I mean, anybody who's connected to the flow of information knows who Robert Downey Jr. is, for example, or Meryl Streep, right? And I think the effect that must have on a human being, on the psyche of the person, is probably not a healthy one. Because, I mean, having an understanding of what identity is, it's one part who you are as informed by what's going on deep inside of your psyche, right? And finding its way from the subconscious all the way up. But it's also part of a feedback loop of what you're being given from people around you, from those people around you, and the way you bounce off the world. So it's two-part, you know. Your identity is both is the manifestation of the way that you decide to act based upon what you're being given from the outside world. And when you're so known, and what you're being given is being given by so many people, and the things you say, will be judged by so many people. When a story breaks about you that's negative, for example, the story and the perception that, of course, develops around you probably doesn't align with your perceptual experience of what was going on at the time, right? I mean, maybe it does, but highly unlikely.
What you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you think about what must happen in order for an individual to actually function with that sort of burden, for lack of a better term, deep down inside of them, and in the depths of their psyche and their psychology, my intimation of it is that it's either you become almost megalomaniacal, self-aggrandizing in the sort of Kanye West way in which you think you're, Christ on earth again or something, God's gift to man, or you go the other route where the self just shrinks, that your actual identity as you understand it just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks until you
maybe have a breakdown.
If not something worse,
Yeah.
If not to do what many celebrities wind up doing, and just ending it. And that's, I'm not unempathetic.
And it doesn't make it any easier when the industry is also really, on top of that, trying to manipulate you. Because
you're a product.
Yes.
You're a walking vehicle for the next blockbuster film that makes that system that is embedded within a capitalist structure.
Right.
Money.
Right.
So and again, I'm pro capitalism, but again, it's really about adjusting our presuppositions, right?
Yeah. Well, why not let, taking the celebrity part out of it for a moment, why not let an artist be an artist and let it speak for itself, let it sell itself? Mm-hmm. This is not what the industry people are willing to do at all. There, and there are various reasons for that. It's not only money, but they want certain things to be the reason you spend your money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Certainly their political agendas are currently involved in all of that more than ever. And there's some artists that I used to really revere at one point, when they seemed to be at a place that for a little while they were able to do their own thing, and no longer can, really. Sometimes it's because they've been made to do other things than what they want to do, and sometimes they've just straight up given into it, I think it's a pretty good example of that is Adele. I think she used to be more herself at another point, and I think that she still, puts out all right stuff, but I think she's definitely willing to play the game more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a bit of a turn off. You feel it, you sense it. You hear the music and you sense it. You feel the difference.
Mm-hmm.
But I really enjoyed her first two albums and how real they were. I think that genuineness is now gone.
Well, yeah, I think in the entertainment industry, I'm inclined to agree with you for most of it. I don't know how long it was there. I do think that it used to be the case that most of the entertainment came from a more genuine place.
Yeah, I think
And
in the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah, I think in the 80s was the beginning of the transition in a lot of ways into it being more of a product than something that existed for its own sake.
Yeah. But there's still a lot of leeway then, though. And then when you get into the 90s, it gets narrower.
Yeah, I mean there were fitful starts in the 90s. You had you had Nirvana, you had some of this what was going on, the punk movement and the grunge movement certainly still had some of that, but I mean that's why Cobain offed himself, or maybe Courtney Love did it, whatever. But that's that's the theory. That's pretty much why he did it, is because he didn't want to become a part of he didn't want his music to be a product. That was a big part of what tortured him. I mean, there are artists that have done and managed to maintain. Maynard James Keenan of Tool for me is a big one.
How about Ted Nugent?
Nugent, David Bowie, I think, was one of those just artists that really just was really about his art and his craft more than anything. It didn't get sucked into it. Bowie, though, was around for a very long time, so he went through it. He went through that whole system. By the time it became what it is today, he was already well beyond established.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my great concern.
I'm not questioning his genuineness. I just have mixed feelings about him. I used to love him a lot. I used to love him.
He's one of my favorites.
You'd think, being gay, that I'd be way hipper and be like, yes, David Bowie. But no, I question his darkness. It's,
Well,
I like some darkness. I do, but I do question it. I'm not always sure what it's about. So.
Well, it's hard. I mean, true artistry, you're going someplace that people don't normally go. I mean, really, when you're a true artist. I mean, there are layers, right? You have your pop, which is very and there's a place for pop. But it's usually a very literalist, surface sort of telling of the story of a communication of something of, what would you say, intrinsic to being, right? But then you have the people who reach further and further down into the depths of, for lack of a better term, their soul.
And I do appreciate that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And trying to find something, almost go from their unique experience to find something that is not so unique, something that everyone can connect with and share. And still keep it within the framework of how, obviously it manifests uniquely because it's within the framework of the person creating it. Once the pen hits the paper, once the guitar gets picked up, then it becomes kind of bounded within the physical space of reality and what that person can produce. And I think that's why sometimes it's hard to really get what's going on in a lot of great art. You don't know why it hits you, but it hits you. You don't always know what it's about, and you have to really listen. You really have to listen. And for me, Bowie's, full admission, I always liked Bowie, but I didn't really love him until I heard his last album. And when I understood what he was doing, then I started going back, and then I saw, okay, I see. This is somebody who's really really reaching into themselves to try and pull something out, and then kind of taking all of that primordial chaotic mess of existence, and then confining it within the order of a song,
Yeah.
and making it marketable enough for people to actually hear.
Yeah.
So that's what true artists do, and I think Maynard James Keenan of Tool definitely also is one of those people who just really, and he has also just kind of avoided the fame monster, in a lot of ways. Lives in Arizona, runs his own vineyard, and basically, fucks off when he's not doing music, and
that's usually the best way to do it.
And he's been very successful at it. So
Yeah.
there's hope, but
Yeah.
but it's tough, It's the entertainment industry has really lost a lot of that soul for me. As we're back on.
Yeah.
So we've hit a lot of stuff. We have two other kind of topics that would then expand from minimalism, and then
What
we
are
have
the
gun
two?
control. We
And
have
then gun control.
minimalism, which was going to go into, which of course would expand outward, and then gun control. We've done a good 2 hours.
Yeah, we have.
I would say if you want, we can hit on one of the two.
Yeah. Which one do you
Because
prefer
I know
of the
I'll
two?
be getting burnt out.
Yeah.
Actually, if I don't watch myself.
Yeah.
And then I'll say something stupid. Either or. My issue with the gun control argument is it's just so. I'm just so tired of it. I'm tired of it. It's kind of. It doesn't fire me up as much anymore. I mean, unlike some of the more tried and true arguments like pro-life, pro-choice, still gets me pretty fired up. But
when they take a topic like that and hammer it to death, it starts to actually, it's not irrelevant, but there's this sense that it starts to become irrelevant.
Yeah.
Like, you know what, I don't care what you think, in a way,
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the biggest losing issue for Democrats is gun control. The vast majority of the population are not in favor of any sort of gun control laws or measures being passed. We can have a conversation about mental health and things like that, and I think that's fine. But the actual Second Amendment as such, most people are pretty happy with. So that's one thing. That's just like, why do we even need to go there? And the other thing is just generally arguments coming from that side are not very strong. They're just, don't you care about, won't somebody think of the children, essentially. And it's like, we are. And that's not, and you're not making an argument. You're just being, what was that character in The Simpsons? Won't somebody think of the children? I think it was the preacher's wife, wasn't it?
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
And that's, I'm just tired of
I know, me too.
So, but we could go that, or we can go the minimalism and then get more philosophical on that.
So why don't we tag on the minimalism to the beginning of the next one that we do, because that is very philosophical,
sure.
And that's going to be a good segue into sort of less tangible feeling stuff, such as a little bit of conspiracy theory, or which also really, you could say, either tie into or really is the same as agendas within the Democratic Party, Hollywood, all these agendas that work together for this end goal of tearing down humanity, and why. So those are the kind of things we can tap into next time.
Blessed are those who hate their bodies, or something like that, if I remember Nietzsche correctly. So then, so let's do gun control.
Yeah.
Why don't you, would you like to kick off what is your perception of the current, I guess, argument as it has become manifested?
Yeah, recently.
Now, I mean, it always comes back, but...
Yeah, well now, I don't think I've ever seen it this bad, though.
Certainly has reached a certain point where it's...
The left is desperate
for
this control.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of this David Hogg guy?
Of course.
This kid? Okay, well, I'm just going to give you my opinion on this. You know how he's like really up here right now? You know what that means? It just means... That's all that means.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to go
And like a
crashing
lion out
down.
like a lamb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's, he's really making a fool of himself. He's also, in some news interviews and things like that, cursing up a storm as if that's going to do him any good. He just looks like some wannabe pretty boy nerd, and he's not that pretty. And then if you want to dig up some background stuff on him, his father's in the FBI and his mother's connected to CNN.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's going on there and why, and I'm sure he's just another, sort of yuppie kid who wants to push communism.
Well, I don't spend too much time thinking about David Hogue. I don't think he's worth that much time, quite frankly. And I'm sorry to say that about somebody
Me too.
who is
I
younger
don't spend
than me.
a lot of time.
I really don't take any joy in that. But what I've seen of his behavior is not that of an individual who I would really have any respect for. I mean, I've seen mostly interviews or the way he's spoken to people who are not pro-gun control. When CNN did a town hall, I believe it was Marco Rubio who was there.
Okay.
And the way that certain questions were delivered, that was so just hateful and vitriolic and insinuating that the man standing across from him somehow was equatable with the individual who went and did this shooting. That is all that around which we still don't have all the details, and there are very many dubious questions to be asked.
He tries to be condescending.
I
suppose you could say he is.
What's less enjoyable than a
not
condescending child? I'm not going to be condescended to, and nor should anybody. I mean, you can learn something from anyone, but I don't want to be condescended to by somebody who has never held a real job in their lives.
Yeah.
But.
And believe me, maybe it sounds like it, I haven't given him a lot of thought. This is literally from having seen a few clips, because he's become a bit of a superstar lately, and the left think that, the kiddies in the left think that he's going to be the next hero, which is strangely strange and cute, but not in a complimentary way. And I haven't thought about it a lot. This is literally from seeing a couple of clips in maybe 2 days, and it's like, I know what you're about. It's really that simple. So there is a little bit of a little bit of an intuitive place that I'm talking from right now, and that is somewhat of a segue into what we'll get into next time, because it's a lot of it is intuitive. It's intuitive. There is research based on it, but it's like when you've seen the same story, or you've seen the same blueprint or script. A lot of these people are so, you can read them. They're not a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I feel about him. It's, got you figured out.
I mostly just find him very tedious. Yeah.
He thinks he's the shit.
I suppose any child getting that much screen time would.
Yeah.
It's, and how much of it is to really be believed that it's even real, and how much of it is he's being scripted and fed lines. We don't. It does. I mean, it reeks of. It reeks of something that is not manifesting in reality through the nature of interest, and more just people pushing for their own individual agendas. And there's very little reason I could see to give much consideration to any of that,
Yeah. But gun control. So getting back to the point, he's just really pushing it. He's the poster child a little bit right now. So I thought I'd bring him up, and he's gonna find himself crashing on his face. you know, these people just they haven't learned anything in school. I'm sure school is unfortunately set up that way right now. They haven't learned about, you know, the leaders who have taken guns away, in our history, only to trample on the actual people,
Mm-hmm.
on the, you know, of course Stalin and, you know, Hitler, you know, they took away the guns.
Well, yeah.
So
They disarmed the population.
So, I don't know why people think that the government is on their side. These people on the left, or at least Democrats, are on their side. I don't know why it is that they think that, or why it is that they believe that. They must feel so lonely that they need comrades in the Democratic Party or something.
Well, you know, it harkens back to when we were talking about the difference between a secular worldview, a purely secular materialistic worldview, and a worldview predicated upon the... You know, I don't want to wade into a deist sort of area, but the belief in sort of a higher order value
Mm-hmm.
that is outside of the material, that is transcendent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
If you fall into the former camp, then you have to believe that the physical manifestation of value as the state as such is your salvation, and that's the fundamental presupposition, I would say, involved with people who believe the government is the solution to my problems. The problems of my life can be solved by the structure of the state, whereas people who believe otherwise say no, the fundamental problems in my life are my responsibility first, and no one else's, and my faults as well. You know, I'm the progenitor and the solution to everything that goes wrong in my life. You either believe that, and you believe that that sort of your salvation, for lack of a better term, comes from something greater than the physical. You know, the state, for example, which is just a machine. It's just a tool like anything else. You either believe that it's something outside of that, or you believe that that is what's going to save you. And that, I think, is what lies at the heart of thinking, well, the state can take away all the guns, they'll have the guns, and they're going to protect me, and they're going to do right by me, and because they're going to be my saviors. That is my salvation. That's what Marx believed. You know?
I think they have a belief that they are in cahoots with the government, and so they almost feel that they have their paw in the cookie jar, so to speak, and so the government is a part of them, and so because the government is a part of them, the government is also able to be their savior. I don't think that they see themselves that far removed from the government, and because they don't, that's why they have a big problem with Donald Trump being a part of that government. It's like, wait, that was never supposed to happen.
Right.
So I guess what I'm doing is psychologically trying to make the link between why they feel such safety within their government. They must almost feel a part of it. They must, maybe in voting or whatever, they have this illusion that they set it up, that they, you know what I mean? And then on top of that, I can add to that as a classical liberal once upon a time, I never thought that was the position of a liberal, that to think that the government's gonna save you. I was always
usually the opposite.
Yeah,
well, that would be the classical liberal.
That's what I was.
Would be that the government, you want as little in government as possible, has been generally a liberal mindset. It's against the man. The government is the man, right?
Yeah, I can't even relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
Then, the whole thing was very confusing to me for a while.
Well, there's a truism there that
I would, when Breitbart said politics is downwind of culture, that's certainly true. Politics is a manifestation. What happens politically, what laws are passed, who gets elected into office, it's sort of a demonstration of the value of the whole, right? Yeah. So we are, in some way, we have a direct relationship, whether we know it or not, with what happens politically.
We are. Oh, absolutely. I'm
but
not saying that we're not, but I feel like the left feels like they have a different relationship with government beyond what you're just saying, which is true. I mean, they really think that, Nancy Pelosi is really great and on their side.
I see what you're saying.
They really think that.
So almost like they have actual personal relationship with the individuals within government.
Yeah, I mean, I literally had a manager who just thought that Elizabeth Warren was the greatest thing that she really needed to run in 2020. And I'm like, why do you think she's so great? But,
Have you ever met her?
Yeah, and do you know about her lies? You could just tell these people felt so connected. And it probably has to do with what you were saying before about that compassion thing. That's got their brains flipped upside down.
Well, I mean, there's some research around, I believe, that elections are won almost more by personality than platform in a lot of ways. So, and the personality, the persona, as shown to people when you're on let's say Donald Trump on a stage, being boisterous and blustering, and his tweets, for example, that's not really who he is necessarily. Obviously, I mean, to say that would be to say that all of your Facebook posts are an exact manifestation of what's going on within you. It's what you're broadcasting to people. It is persona. It is your negotiation with the world. So it's really a lacking of any sort of in-depth thinking about it. I mean, just taking that as one step further and understanding these people aren't your friends. Even if you vote them in, they are not your friends. They work for you, and they work for you in a very, very distant way.
And you have to keep on top of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I know about that, being a Donald Trump supporter, and I always have.
Mm-hmm.
So I was interviewed by the Daily Beast. Have you heard of the Daily Beast?
Yeah, I've heard of. I'm sure I've stumbled across an article or two and rolled my eyes so hard that I saw my brain.
Yeah, well, I was at Trump's 100th day rally.
Okay.
And so I was interviewed by the Daily Beast there at the time. I'm not sure if I've ever told you this story. But anyway, you would almost be slightly uncertain of whether I was a Trump supporter or not, because at the time it was when that small attack on the in Syria happened in the what do you call that? They blew up a couple of hangars basically in Syria. And so I was really concerned. I was really concerned when that was going on, because that's definitely not one of the things that I had voted him in for. And I understand the machine in the swamp and what it is that they're really doing in the Middle East. And long story short, a lot of it has to do, and this is where some of the conspiracy theories. So we're tapping on it a little bit already, but it's debatably conspiracy theories, because what I'm about to say is an absolute fact. After they, topple these countries, then they install a bank. So, I suppose the conspiracy theory could more lie in the theory part, could lie in as what exactly are they doing with those banks. But one can guess. And so they set up a Federal Reserve in all of these places, and I did not want Donald Trump to be doing what all of the presidents have been doing, mainly starting with Bush in these Middle Eastern countries.
Right.
I was afraid that we were going to go down that route, that someone had convinced him to do that he was caving into, elite politicians. And I did my job as a citizen. So I was interviewed, and I said, well, this is why I support Donald Trump, but this is what he's doing right now, and this is not why I voted for him. And I have a problem with the fact that he's doing this. And I think people need to educate themselves on the banking system, what kind of system exactly we have now. People need to look into the Federal Reserve. People need to look into the Rothschild dynasty and really learn about who these people are, and go back as far as the War of 1812 and see how they've been doing. This is all history. This is not debatable. How they've been doing the same thing over and over again, funding both sides of a war and coming out the real winners at the end of the day. And I didn't want Donald Trump to go down that route of installing another bank in Syria, toppling the country and installing another bank. And then when he didn't, I was really happy. So I'd like to consider myself a citizen who did his role, and am one of the reasons Donald Trump did not go any further with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my relationship with the government, and that's really my whole point in this. That's not how Democrats see it at all, or today's Democrats see it at all. They don't really accept that role. They have a different relationship. They think they have a relationship, but it's different. It's not quite that.
Right. Right. Well, it's less to hold the power to account. Again, I do think it is fundamentally a belief that power structure is going to be the solution to the problems.
Yeah.
And not that it is simply what the state has always been, a very flawed and very corrupt tool. I mean, people don't spend even a cursory amount of time asking themselves, what is the state by definition? What is the government by definition?
And
they don't understand what that is as an entity, what lies at the bottom of that.
Well, I'm just so curious.
That's a big part of the problem, I think, you know.
I agree. How could they be so naive? That's really my question. For these people who, they want to stand up and march and fight for their right, I'm like, God, you're putting so much energy into all of that, but do you even know what's up?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you even know what's up?
Well, yeah, no.
You don't even know.
Well, I can say this much to that, and I'm not sure how much. I mean, I'm kind of shooting in the dark somewhat here, but people are concerned with their day-to-day.
Yeah.
What affects them in their day-to-day lives, the things that give them moment-to-moment joy and moment-to-moment discomfort, displeasure. And most people are very much only rooted in that.
Yeah.
That is the baseline of their perceptions. They go about their day, and as long as a meteor didn't hit them on the head, and they were able to maybe make it a little bit better, that's a good day, and there's some truth to that. But then they also like to set themselves up as individuals who can judge who can just make instant judgments of complex systems at work without understanding them. And because people are busy, they don't take the time, they don't have the interest. I mean, not everybody goes home and reads, a complex book.
That's some great selection.
Most people go home and turn on Netflix, and they want to just unplug.
Yeah.
And I can be sympathetic to that. I can understand why, because being hurts. Every day can be a struggle, in some ways it is, and wanting a reprieve from that, as opposed to getting in the muck and choosing not to be naive.
Yeah.
That's hard, So it's I think it's good to be sympathetic to these people, but at the same time, you have to do the moral duty of telling them when they're wrong, because then that's as somebody who does dig in deeper. I mean, would be more knowledgeable about the complex banking systems than I would be, so I would defer to you and want to know more from you about that. I mean, I have some understanding, but not quite in that depth. And what these people, I'm not an Illuminati believer, but I'm an understander of, like, I believe in people acting in their own interests, you know, and there's a vast, complex set of corrupt systems set up with a bunch of people doing exactly what people do, which is acting in their own interest.
Yeah.
And you have to, and if you're going to try to take down some of those structures or restructure some of those structures or speak in such a way that is educated to say that these things need to be changed, you have to take a kind of a God's eye view and actually understand what the hell is going on there.
And they, these people really count on us not knowing.
Well, yeah.
That's how they get away. It's one of the ways they get away with things.
Certainly.
So, but to add to what I said, why are these people so naive? Or that whole thing that you said about them coming home and disconnecting, unplugging, turning on Netflix and stuff like that. For me, I don't even really have to read 100 books to know this stuff. Although I end up either doing that or watching documentaries that I trust in and things like that, and then cross-checking them with books. I do end up doing that, but I don't even do it where I come home from work and that's what I do because I know that I have to do that because I have to stay informed. I end up sort of just doing that by default.
Mm-hmm.
But that default comes from intuition. So I see something happen and it's my gut telling me that something is wrong here when I see a bunch of people marching to ban guns altogether. I mean, there's something in my gut. And so that fuels everything for me. It's not just because I'm smart and I read a bunch of books. It's not just because of that. I only end up doing that because my gut's telling me something's wrong. Where is their gut? And so that's what I have to add to that.
I think their intuitions are mostly rooted in their day-to-day. And I mean, obviously, everyone's is. I mean, everyone's involved in their day-to-day. I mean,
sure.
If you're, like we talked about earlier, you're somebody who wants to have a dating life and find somebody, and that's a day-to-day thing that's rooted in your very personal experience, right?
See, but I actually had to take a break to get to that.
Sure. Well, but then there's the more macro understanding of things, and when you want to go and look at more large-scale complex issues, it means you have to look at the micro things within there to really form an educated opinion about it. We're all bounded things stuck with kind of a 2D representation of the world, and we have to bounce off each other to try and figure out what the hell's really going on. But I mean, as far as saying the intuition to saying what's wrong, I mean, first you have to have an interest, something in the self, deep down, that's saying, look here, take an interest in this, and that's hard to identify because that's finding who you are. I mean, that's something intrinsic to your being. But I can speak to the feeling of like looking at things going on and going, there's something not right here. I mean, when I look at, for me lately, when I look at, say, the situation as it's manifesting between what's going on in the Middle East and Russia and here and the UK and all these moving parts, all coalescing and moving in times in such a way that's very, very indicative to me of some great interconnectedness there, and maybe that's just me being conspiratorial. I don't know, but it does that. I mean, knowing how broad and large and complex these things are, that doesn't seem like it would be the case, and that there's something unfolding and something at work that we can't fully understand because it's just too much information. But I mean, so I guess I could say I get that intuition as well. Yeah, And because it is all connected. I mean, everything is connected. At the end of the day, the entire system of the world as such is all connected. It's an ecosystem. So to assume that these political movements are not connected to 10,000 other things and 10,000 other people with their own interests that are not all necessarily, cannot be all wholly good. I mean, that's obvious. That seems to be just duh.
Yeah.
People are corrupt. Duh.
Yeah. But I don't know. Let's complete this on a positive note.
Yeah,
if we can.
That's a bit dour. So let's bring it back up, huh?
If we can.
So what do we? So I guess then the question is,
what do we do? How do we?
What do we do?
What would you say? What would you, to end it on a positive note? What would your words of advice be to sort of work against the ever growing chaos?
Well, this almost sounds like a leftist thing to say in itself, but it really isn't. I think we have to make sure that we are sending them love. Yeah. The left, which sounds like something that they would say, but they don't tend to actually do that. In many cases. And just know that nature will take its course, and as it will be fitting that a lot of them will self-implode and are in the midst of it, and hopefully other people will learn from seeing that happen and not just perceive it as failure from their counterparts, because if they do, they'll just create their own self-implosion as well. Hopefully they'll see it as, well, why is this happening? And maybe it'll wake them up a little bit. Why is this happening to us? If they can figure out that absolute resistance is going to facilitate for that self-implosion, if they can figure that out, then maybe they can come to some other answers. And I just think in the end, we're going to be okay. I think we're going to be okay. Sanity's going to win the day. But in the meantime, we're going to see a lot of insanity. We're going to see a lot of pushing back. But you got to remember, why are they pushing back? It's just massive insecurity. And that's only going to eat them up at the end of the day. It's going to eat them up.
Well, that brings you back to stories. I think that's why we need to get back to telling stories that inspire.
Well, then we need artists like you. That
raise people up to bring, well, maybe.
Because we don't have Hollywood anymore doing it for us. Those artists in Hollywood and these people that they think they're better than us. They think they know more than us. They think they know what's good for us. They're no longer being helpful to us. They're no longer telling us stories. They've picked a side, and they're marching along with that insecurity just like the rest of them. They're leading the way in some cases. Mm-hmm. And it's really sad. But talk about self-implosion. I mean, we're seeing Hollywood really
just still a bit of a dour note. I think I can bring it back up. In saying that obviously people can be corrupt, and obviously people will self-implode, and obviously we're all a mess of corruption and insecurity and self-doubt. Everyone.
Yeah.
We also have infinite potential.
Oh yeah.
And we can act in such a way. I think and every day is filled with opportunities for minor acts of heroism, whether it be an heroic way of bettering your own life, or a heroic way of bettering other people's. And I think that if we're reminded of that again, if we rediscover that ability, if enough people do, and act individually in their own lives, because life is short and tragic and difficult, but you can work to do something about it. That will move things. That's the chance to move everything towards reunifying whatever schism has happened politically, whatever, or individually, and really try to build upon really the best time in history to be alive as a human being, and especially in the West.
Yeah.
We can build something better out of that, as opposed to just letting it all fall into chaos or tyranny. I'm hopeful. I have to be. You have to be, because it's the only way you can act as such, act as a hero.
This is true.
Yeah, that lifts it up.
Yeah.
That better?
Good job.
Is that better?
Good job on that.
Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you before we sign off? That way,
Yeah, so it's Beautiful Scars 2.0 on Instagram. And so beautiful, just as the word is spelled, except the F is substituted by a number 7, and then the word scars 2.0. You'll catch me there every so often, posting my thoughts, posting a lot of information on the banks, on the elite, these people that think that they're better than us and things like that. I post some historical information on things like Masonry and these concepts of where the Illuminati come from and things like that. Those are all just terms. They're all just terms. Doesn't really matter what you call them. As you had mentioned, we already know that people exist who are functioning only for themselves and for nothing else. Not at all for the greater good. And that's what really my Instagram is about. And you'll see, listen, I'm not there to, there's a lot of people that love what I post, but I'm not there just to please them. It's my Instagram, so you'll get, me at a bar drinking occasionally, with a couple of friends or something like that. But I have a lot of really good, intelligent friends and things like that, so I don't hang out with dummies. So occasionally they'll say something. They have something good to offer as well. And that's where you can find me. Beautiful Scars 2.0, the F substituted by a number 7, because July's my birthday, 7. So 7's my lucky number.
Perfect. Well then, with that, he's been Mike. I've been Josh. You've been amazing.
It was a really great chat, by the way.
Likewise.
It was
and
good.
We'll do it again very soon, I hope.
Yeah, we will.
Stay tuned to my YouTube. Obviously, if you're here, you know where that is. Instagram at the Josh Lazarus. Same thing on Twitter. I'm working on it more every day, and I hope to set up another one of these with either Mike or another guest very, very soon. If you have any interest, if you're in the Manhattan, New York area, and you have any interest in coming and being in this chair, and maybe some topics that you would like to discuss, reach out to me via any of those platforms, Instagram, Twitter, or even possibly comment a private message on YouTube, and we can see about fleshing something out. So thanks again for watching, guys. Thank you, Mike. And
Thanks.
See you all soon. Be good.